What is up? Today we're going to talk about powers of the imaginary unit. So let me explain what the imaginary unit is first of all. All has to deal with square roots. If we take a simple square root example like square root of 4, right? Well, the square root of 4, that equals 2. Because 2 times 2 is 4. So the square root of 4 is 2. Well, people started playing around with that, and they're like, well, what if we had a negative square root, right? Like the square root of negative 1. And they found that there's no number that multiplies by itself to equal negative 1, because 1 times 1, that equals positive 1, and negative 1 times negative 1, that equals positive 1. So there's no number that multiplies by itself to get negative 1. Except there's this one guy, well, he formalized it. There were people that did it before him, but he's the one that wrote it down, so he gets credit for it. Let that be a note to you. His name was Bombelli. So he said, I know that the square root of negative 1 does not exist, but what if it did? If it did, I'm going to call it I, the imaginary unit. We're going to call it I. So then he started playing around with I, and he's like, well, if we took I and we squared it, well, that would be the same as the square root of negative 1 squared, right? Because I is the square root of negative 1. And what happens when square roots and squares come into contact with each other? They cancel out. So actually, I squared would equal negative 1. And he went, well, what about I cubed? I cubed would be I squared times I. And I squared we found was negative 1. And when I multiply negative 1 times I get negative I. And then he went I to the fourth. I to the fourth equals I squared times I squared, which is negative 1 times negative 1. And that equals 1. And he kept messing with it. So let's go on. Let's continue to do a couple other ones. And then he kept messing with it, and he did I to the fifth. And I to the fifth equals I to the fourth times I. Well, what's I to the fourth equal? 1. So now I have 1 times I. That equals I. And he did I to the sixth. I to the sixth is I to the fourth times I squared. I to the fourth is 1. I squared is negative 1. 1 times negative 1 is negative 1. I to the seventh is I to the fourth times I cubed. Well, I to the fourth was 1. I cubed, as we found from the last time, rewind if you forgot, was negative I. 1 times negative I is negative I. And I to the eighth would be I to the fourth times I to the fourth. I to the fourth was 1. So we go 1 times 1, that equals 1. These four values will keep repeating over and over no matter what the exponent on the I. That'll go I, negative 1, negative I, 1. And it just keeps repeating over and over and over again. So what they're going to ask you to do, they're going to ask you to simplify these complex numbers here. So I to the 8th power. So, I mean, if we really wanted to, we could go, okay, well, I to the 8th. Oh, we just found I to the 8th. I to the 8th is I to the 4th times I to the 4th. I to the 4th is 1 times 1 is 1, so this must be 1. Well, that's one way of doing it. I get it right. I to the 7th, we already found that, right? I to the 7th was negative I. So negative I was this one. The problem comes when we get to like I to the 34th. Do we really want to go, okay, I to the 34th is I to the 4th times I to the 4th times I to the 4th. I don't want to do that. Probably you don't want to do that. So what we're going to do instead, is we're going to take our exponent, 34, and we're going to divide it by 4. Why 4? Because there are 4 possibilities in this for the exponents of complex numbers. So if I do 34 divided by 4, I get 8.5, right? Now the important thing that we're looking for is we're looking for the decimal part. We care about the decimal. I could care less about the 8. What I care about is the decimal. Okay, so what happens is if I get no decimal at all, that means my answer is 1. If I get 0.25, my answer is I. If I get 0.5, my answer is -1. And if I get 0.75, my answer is -I. So I got 0.5, so my answer is going to be -1. 51. All right, let's do this. 51, what did I say to do? Take 51, divide it by 4, gives me 12.75. 12.75, no decimal, 0.25, 0.5, 0.75. It's going to be -I. That's all this is. Just finding exponents, dividing by 4, figuring out which one of those 4 I have and which one it goes with. And that's all there is today. Good luck. Let me know if you have problems.